Hey guys, what's up? I'm headed over to Walmart in Grove, Oklahoma. I got to do a little promotion for Bridgeford Foods before I get out on the water today for the last practice day at the Toyota Series here at Grand Lake. So sort of a short day today. Gonna have to make the most of it this afternoon. And just wanted to do a little quick video here, sort of pertinent to today's situation of the short practice. And that's on the fact of one of the big keys in fishing practice for a tournament, or just if you're out, just fishing for fun, looking for fish, is you got to learn to fish smart and not hard. And I want to sort of explain, what I mean by that, because it doesn't make a lot of sense in the term of when you're thinking about work ethic. But guys, I can tell you something right now about bass fishing. Every other thing in life, when you talk about a job or anything like that, or getting ahead in life, is every single thing in life usually centered around having a good work ethic. The people that work the hardest usually are most successful. Unfortunately, that's not true in bass fishing. I can tell you right now that the people that work the hardest in the sport of fishing, in terms of putting in time on the water, just fishing hard and that type of stuff, does not equate a lot of times to being successful in a tournament. And let me give you guys an example of what I'm talking about here. Back in the day when I was in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and I was really starting to come into my prime as a tournament fisherman, I was rooming and traveling with a good friend of mine named Danny Korea. Danny and I, Danny finished second at the Bassmasters Classic in 1986. He was the Federation National Champion. That's how we met at the Classic, and we became great friends over the years. And we roomed and traveled together for 15, almost 20 years on the Bassmaster circuit. So anyway, this was back in the early 1990s, and Danny and I we'd had sort of inconsistent success. We'd have some good tournaments, we'd have some bad tournaments, but we were young, we were hungry to do well in the tournament, we were hungry to make a name for ourselves in the sport, and we made a commitment. We said, okay, we just have to work harder. We've got to work harder than anybody else, and if we do that, we're going to be more successful than anybody else. So we made a commitment during, I think it was the 1993 season on the Bassmaster circuit, that we were going to spend more time on the water practicing than anybody in the tournament. So we were roomed together, and what we would do, we would get up in the morning, like at 3 o'clock every morning, literally 3 in the morning. We would hook up, we would go to the lake, and we would launch sometimes 2 hours before daylight in practice. And we would just sit there. We'd be the first ones to the ramp, and we'd sit there and talk, wait for the sun to come up, and we'd fish all day long, super hard. And we made a commitment that we were going to be the last 2 guys off the water also in the evening. So we didn't come off the water until it was dark. I mean, we came in with our running lights every day, and we did that every single day of the season. We literally spent more time on the water practicing than anybody. You know what the result of that was? We both had the worst season of our entire career that year. Both of us, we just did terrible that year. We worked harder than anyone else, and it just did not pay off. So that made me really evaluate, this whole thing about work ethic and fishing hard versus fishing smart. And because I got looking at some guys out there that, they just didn't. Some of these guys would show up to the launch ramp in the morning at 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and they'd fish for 4 or 5 hours, and they'd come off the water, and they were smoking in the tournaments. They'd make the Classic every year. They do really good in the tournaments. And I started analyzing, and I started thinking, and I started watching guys like Steve Kennedy that, sometimes he won't even practice, or he'll go out for an hour or two, and then he'll come in and he'll spend the day playing around with his kids, at the campground. And maybe during the course of 3 days, he'll practice for 3 or 4 hours total, and winds up making the top 10 in the tournament. So it gets me to my point of fishing smart versus fishing hard. One of the things you have to realize at bass fishing is you have got to trust yourself to let things unfold during the tournament. I think too many times we want to go out and practice, and we want to find an area that's loaded and that we're getting a lot of bites in, and we want to go there the first morning of the tournament and catch a limit on our first 5 casts. That's sort of the mentality a lot of people have. And by working hard in practice, we felt that we should be, rewarded from that hard work by doing good in the tournament. That's not the way it is. The amount of work you put into the sport does not equate into the reward many times, simply because you're dealing with an inanimate object. Bass are not like, it's not like if you are baling hay or something like that, and the amount of hay that you stack up in the barn is totally determined about how many hours you put in working, stacking hay. That's not the way it is in fishing. Bass don't read books. They're unpredictable, and they change from moment to moment and time to time. What the big key is, as far as practicing, whether you're practicing for a tournament or you're just out fun fishing for the weekend and you want to try to locate fish, is you have to be able to mentally read the potential of an area, is what we're talking about. This is what I'm talking about, fishing smart. And for example, when you pull into an area and say that you catch a fish in that particular area, you've got to look at that area and you've got to say, okay, was that just an isolated fish, or does this area have potential for me to catch a limit of fish in here? And that is what you have to learn from experience. You have to learn from, the type of cover that's in the water, the amount of fishing pressure that the area is getting, if there's any type of bite window during the day. All these factors come together in determining how good that particular area is going to be. And that's what's called fishing smart. Here's an example of what I'm talking about fishing hard versus fishing smart. Yesterday, when I was practicing at Grand Lake, I pulled into this one big bay, and right off the bat, I caught a nice one in there. Okay, and I looked up ahead of me, and there's quite a bit of water, similar, that looks similar, and there's some other type of water. So at that point, I have to make the decision, okay, do I want to just get in here and pick apart every piece of cover and figure out, what bait they want, what lure, what profile, what color, all that type of stuff? Or do I want to take it from the standpoint, okay, I caught one fish in here, there's more cover that's like in there, let's figure it out in the tournament. I chose the latter. I chose to pull up that trolling motor after getting one bite, and I'll go back in that area tomorrow and I'll find out what's there. And that is what I'm talking about, fishing smart and not fishing hard. By fishing smart, it allows you to cover a lot of water. It allows you to, boost your confidence in a particular area without fishing through there. And that's another aspect about it, is you have to be able to gain confidence in an area without catching fish in there if the conditions get right. Another thing about fishing smart and not fishing hard is, like, pay attention to the weather patterns. Weather patterns that are preceding the day that you're fishing or that are coming up for the day that you're fishing have a huge impact on the areas that are going to be productive and the techniques that are going to be productive. One of the big things I would suggest, guys, about fishing smart is to become a weather geek. You need to pay close attention to the weather, and the more that you fish and the more that you get an understanding about how certain weather patterns either positively or negatively affect certain techniques and certain baits, that's a huge bonus, or it's a huge bump to your ability to become a better angler, because weather has a massive impact on some bait categories versus others. For the most part, you're going to find, I'll just give you one quick example of what I'm talking about, is for the most part, you'll find that cold front conditions have a negative impact on most type of moving baits, any type of baits that move horizontally through the water column, whereas your bottom bouncing lures, like your worms and your jigs and your football heads, that type of stuff, they don't have as quite a big of an impact in a post front situation. That's another example of what I'm talking about here. But basically what I wanted to do in this video is I just wanted to let everybody know out there that one of them is, don't get frustrated if your hard work does not equate into success, because you're not the only one out there, and that's just the reality of the situation. Learn to fish smart. Learn to take advantage of the time that you have on the water to be able to read the water, read the potential the water has, and don't feel that you have to get out there and just be out there from daylight till dark. Sometimes you can get in, sometimes too much practicing or too much fishing can be detrimental, because if you got too much stuff going on, and if you have too many options, sometimes that can pull you away from making a commitment to the primary area that you need to put in there. So I found a lot of times in tournaments that I do a lot better in tournaments that I don't have a lot of options. So it's it's either or. I mean, sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But overall, what I'm talking about is fish smart. Don't worry about fishing that hard. Stay relaxed, stay loose. That's another big key on there. Don't get tight, don't get tense, don't rush, don't slop through an area. You're going to find out that you catch a lot more fish if you go out there and you fish nice and slow and loose and relaxed, and don't get in a big rush. I mean, if you're rushing, if you're fishing too fast, if you got that trolling motor turned up too high, most of the time you're not going to be catching as many fish as if you slow down and just really take your time. So anyway, just a quick tip on the way to Walmart here. I'm going to get out on the water here for a few hours this afternoon. I'll give you guys the final practice day wrap up this afternoon and let you know what my plans are for the tournament. So thanks for tuning in. See y'all later.